I won't waste any of your time. Both of these guitars are bad. Really bad. You shouldn't buy either one. This video is part of the Les Paul experiment where we're talking about everything Les Paul style guitars, and in this episode, I'm attempting to find budget Les Pauls that are really good. Another spoiler, these Epiphones, they failed the test. They're not very good. We've got the Epiphone Les Paul Standard 50s inspired by Gibson, and this one sells for $699. And we've got the Epiphone 1959 Les Paul Standard, which sells for $1,299. That's a $600 price difference between two guitars that are made in the exact same factory and that feel identically bad in your hands. And here's the funny thing, the naming conventions even suck. Of course, these are both more affordable versions of the Gibson Les Paul Standard 50s, which I have right back there. Also, remember that name, Gibson Les Paul Standard 50s. This Cherry Burst one is called the Standard 50s inspired by Gibson because they really want you to believe that this has some type of Gibson DNA of some sort. So they literally jam Gibson into the title. But okay, this one is called the Epiphone 1959 Les Paul Standard, clearly trying to remind you of the Gibson Custom Shop 1959. And funny enough, the one with Gibson in the name doesn't even have the Gibson headstock, but the other one does. This is going to be a very ranty, negative review, but I have a good reason. When I was growing up, I couldn't afford my dream guitar, which was a Parker Fly. So I played a Mexican Strat that I got from eBay for like $400. And while I played that guitar for most of high school, I saved every dollar I made working at Quiznos Subs in Newport Mall in Jersey City, New Jersey, and I bought a Parker P38. It was more expensive than the eBay Strat that I had, but it was still nowhere near as expensive as a Parker Fly. It was the Epiphone of the Parker world. And I played that guitar as my main guitar from 2009 until 2017, and even when I got more expensive guitars, I kept playing the P38 until I finally got my first real Parker. It was a really nice, great quality mid-tier guitar. Why am I telling you this story? Because right now there's some kid who's obsessed with classic rock, most likely. He or she, that kid, is saving up all of their money from their summer job so that they can buy a $1,300 guitar that is really bad. Epiphone should be ashamed of themselves. There are 4 categories you have to think about when you're buying a guitar. I'll reveal them as we go, and you'll see how this guitar fails. I'll also show you exactly why I don't recommend either one, and more importantly, I'll tell you what you should get instead for less money and way higher quality. So starting here, we have the Epiphone inspired by Gibson. Okay, all of this. We're just going to call this the cheaper one. We're going to call this the more expensive one. So we have the cheaper one, and it has the modern Epiphone open book headstock, and the more expensive one has the classic Gibson style headstock. So Epiphone wants you to pay double the money for a headstock that looks like the Gibson headstock, even though the Epiphone headstock almost already looks exactly like the Gibson headstock. That's honestly kind of insulting to the consumer. Both of these guitars come with the same vintage style Kluson tuners, the same Graphtec nuts, the same specs, the same feel, and all of that stuff works just fine. So you really are paying a lot more money specifically because one of the headstocks looks like a Gibson headstock. By the way, if you're enjoying this video, you'll definitely want to check out my Lifelong Guitarist Newsletter. Totally free newsletter, comes to your email every single Saturday morning. It's a free audio video podcast plus an article all about guitar philosophy, guitar playing, guitar licks, everything you could ever want. Again, it's totally free and linked below. Both of these guitars have a chunky rounded 50s profile, which is honestly pretty nice. It's not a perfect match for the Gibson, but it's close enough, and I have to give credit where it's due. The finish on the back of the necks is also nice. It's really comfortable, and it honestly doesn't get sticky like the Gibson does. So as we continue, we have a 12-inch radius, medium jumbo frets, rosewood board, all exactly the same on both guitars. Now, I do wish they used vintage style frets for this model because they're both 50s inspired, and of course the Gibson 50s style guitar does have the more vintage style frets, but it's not a deal breaker. In fact, I think more people like the modern frets, so that's not even a real complaint. But here's where the real problems start, and this is category 1 of 4. feel. We need to know, how does the cheaper one feel? After all, most of playing guitar is your left hand moving up and down the neck. The cheaper one has sharp fret ends right out of the box. It's brand new and it's already bad. In fact, this is honestly so bad that if I bought this guitar and I was reselling it, I wouldn't feel comfortable selling it as new. I would say in the description it needs to have its fret ends touched up because they are that rough. I mean, you can probably hear that right now. I'm actually filing down my gym calluses on my fingers with the fret ends. Point being, when you get a brand new guitar out of the box that has really bad fret ends, you know it's only going to get worse from there as the neck continues to dry out. Also, the fretboard itself is absolutely covered in tooling marks, and the binding is just not the best. It's pretty sloppy overall. So you're probably thinking to yourself, okay, the cheaper one has poor QC, well then just buy the more expensive one. Good point. Somehow, the QC on the more expensive one is actually worse. There is this weird and ugly, almost dirty looking black streak that runs down the entire side of the fretboard, almost like it came out of the mold in a bad way. The fret ends are not as sharp, but they're also pretty sharp. There's one piece of something that's lodged between the fret itself and the binding, and it came like this out of the box. It's honestly gross. There's another area on the neck that looks like it was filled with whiteout. I kid you not. I'm pretty sure this is just filled with whiteout. This is a brand new guitar from the factory, and it's $1,300, and we have binding that is being filled with whiteout. I've been playing budget guitars for over 20 years. Pawn shop guitars, flea market guitars, Craigslist guitars, homemade guitars. This is the worst binding on a neck I have ever seen for any price, period. But it's $1,300. I guess technically speaking, I could have gotten unlucky. Maybe all of the other Epiphone guitars are actually really good. Actually, I know Epiphone can make great guitars because when I compared the Gibson Lucille to the Epiphone Lucille was fantastic and had better fit and finish and better QC. Yeah, maybe Epiphone is just extremely inconsistent. Let me know your experiences in the comments below. That just furthers the point that the QC must be really inconsistent. Also, the binding on this neck is uglier than the binding on the cheaper one as well. I'll just say this. If you're going to buy an Epiphone guitar, make sure you buy it from Zounds, at least then you're covered. 45-day return policy, fast shipping, no drama, and I've linked my favorite Zounds gear below if you're interested. Now, while we have the more expensive one, it does come with a long neck tenon and a single piece neck, which is supposed to help with resonance and sustain. So of course, $1,300. We're on to category 2 of 4, and that is looks. Epiphone did good here. They both look like Les Pauls. They both also have a flame maple veneer, cream binding, and that classic Les Paul silhouette that we all just love so much. Epiphone didn't get that part wrong. They even both have inlays that are reminiscent of their better, more expensive cousin, the real Gibson Les Paul 1950s standard model. Now, when you look at these two guitars, the more expensive one technically has a AAA flame maple veneer, whereas the less expensive one just has a regular flame maple veneer. I'm not sure you can tell on camera. I guess the AAA one is slightly more flamey, but really you have to squint to tell the difference. They're basically the same style of veneer. In terms of the body shape, the hardware, both having veneers, the silhouettes, they're both basically the exact same bodies, except the more expensive one has a longer neck tenon that inserts into the body, I presume, a single piece neck, and it has a AAA flame maple veneer. $1,300, of course. So now we're on to category 3 of 4, and that is tone. And this is where Epiphone tries to justify the price difference. The expensive one has Gibson USA burst buckers, and the cheaper one has Epiphone Pro buckers. Both guitars come with CTS potch, which is solid, and the more expensive one has vintage style wiring, including a switchcraft toggle, a switchcraft jack, Mallory caps, and a 50s style harness. Of course, $1,300. Category 4 is, of course, price. This is honestly where everything falls apart, because here's the thing, if these guitars were like $300, you'd be like, all right, it's $300, whatever. Really, here's the truth of the matter. If you're buying an Epiphone guitar in 2025, you're probably trying to save money instead of buying a Gibson, and that's totally fine. It makes a lot of sense. But again, these guitars are both pretty expensive, especially the more expensive one, and they feel horrible. It's clear that Epiphone is just trying to win you over with looks and tone, but let's be honest, looks and tones are the easiest part of building a guitar. There are tons of pretty guitars that sound and look good. But if the feel is off and the price is high, what are we really paying for here? You know, I made a video a while back about the Epiphone Joe Bonamassa SGs, one of the red ones with the gold hardware and the vibrola. And even back then, I was really annoyed at the price, but looking back, I can kind of say, well, it has gold hardware, it's kind of a signature model thing, limited run. Maybe we can justify the price of that guitar, and even then it's a stretch. But now we have this one, which is just a standard Epiphone guitar. It has none of the fancy appointments, honestly, apart from the pickups, and it's $1,300. So if it wasn't clear, I think both of these guitars are really bad for any price. I wouldn't recommend you buy them at all. Even used, even on sale, don't buy them. They're not very good. Instead, you might check this out. This is a Heritage Ascent Plus model. Don't worry, they have them in other more neutral colors as well, but I wanted the blue one, so I got the blue one. This is a phenomenal guitar. It feels like a Les Paul. We even have a nice belly cut on the back. We have a really nice heel joint upper fret. Access is fantastic, even better than a normal Gibson guitar. The quality is great. The tone is great, it looks great, and it's $700. So this is the same price as the cheaper Epiphone, and it's better by far, way better than either Epiphone. If you need one, I definitely recommend this, but maybe you're like, well, I like that guitar, but I don't want a belly cut. I don't want an improved heel joint. I want it to be totally old school. I have you covered there as well. If you want to go more vintage, I highly recommend you check out the McCarty SE by PRS, of course. It has a really nice chunky neck. It feels very, very similar to the Gibson neck, in fact. We do have a very slight belly cut, but we have the more old school heel. And then, of course, if you look at the top, this is what a flame maple AAA veneer should actually be, not like what we saw on the Epiphone. So this guitar is fantastic. Fit and finish is great. It plays great. And yes, it is $800. So it is $200 more expensive than the cheaper Epiphone, but it's still way less expensive than the more expensive Epiphone. The pickups are also great. If you really wanted to, you can buy a pair of burst buckers and throw them in here. I don't really think that's necessary. Even if you did, this guitar would still be $1,100 buying everything brand new. You can pick up one of these used for $600. At that point, it's even less than the cheap Epiphone. But whatever you do, I beg you, don't buy one of these Epiphone guitars. Sure, maybe you can walk into a guitar center and you can pick one up that actually feels good. Maybe the quality is inconsistent, so you find a nice one. But even then, in my opinion, we're just telling these companies that we're willing to buy crap. So I don't recommend you buy it. I was just kind of reflecting on why these guitars annoyed me so much and thinking about the whole 4-category thing. And if you think about it this way, if you've heard of a guitar and you're like, okay, well, the guitar, it looks good, it plays great, it feels great, and it sounds great, but it's expensive. That kind of makes sense. Like, okay, well, I'm getting the looks, the tone, and the feel, so I have to pay a lot of money for that. That makes sense. And if you are like, okay, well, this guitar, it doesn't look very good, but it feels amazing, it sounds amazing, and it's affordable, you'd be like, well, who cares how the guitar looks? I'm gonna love the way it plays, and it's affordable. Why not? But if you think about it, there's never a logical situation where someone says, that guitar feels really, really bad, but it looks good and sounds good. Oh, by the way, it's also expensive. Do you want that? The answer is pretty much always no. You can never have a guitar that feels bad and is expensive, no matter what else the other categories say. So these guitars kind of defy what we would even want when we're buying any guitar, no matter what the price is. It just doesn't make sense.